Hello, everyone, and welcome to my coming out party. JK, we are all here today for a space for dialogue, navigating Pride Pushback. My name is John Paul Vicari. I also go by JP. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the managing director at We Create Space. For anyone who may need a visual description, I am wearing black glasses. I have dark curly hair. I'm currently wearing a light denim shirt with a black t-shirt underneath, and the wall behind me is a like sage green. We've got quite the lineup for you today. Um, our very special guest, Taylor, will do her introduction in just a moment. But let's quickly walk through our agenda for our time together. So we are currently in the welcome stage. We're going to do a cute little opening poll in just a second. Taylor and I are going to have a conversation. We're going to put you all in breakout groups to be able to discuss amongst each other on a few things. We'll do some group sharing, some time for Q&A with Taylor and myself, as well as key takeaways, and then our closing. Just as a reminder, this session does go until 12:45 Eastern. So whatever your appropriate time zone is, just know this is a 75-minute session, not a 60-minute session. We are recording this part now, and we'll record the conversation between Taylor and I, as well as her key takeaways and mine. But we will not be recording the breakout rooms or the group reflections or anytime anybody else is speaking. So please feel free to be as vulnerable, honest, transparent as you would like. With that said, though, we do want everyone to engage today in a very respectful, kind, curious manner. We want everyone to be very open, so open ears, open eyes, open minds, open hearts. We also know there might be things that come up today that are potentially really challenging or triggering for folks. So if that happens for you, please feel free to step away. Cameras are not required to be on. So whatever you need to do to take care of yourself during the session, please do so. And again, Taylor and I are representing ourselves and our opinions, and very mindful that that might be different than what other people are feeling and experiencing, different than the conversations you'll have between each other. So just make sure that you are, again, listening actively, and try not to center your experience wholly and be open to hearing about others. So let's do a quick little check-in. You can scan the QR code that you see on the screen. You can also click on the link that Neil just put into the chat. But we want you to answer just a few questions for us. So, one, how are you feeling coming into the conversation today? I think the title alone probably is invoking of some emotional response for folks. Have you experienced any stripping back on DEI funding and initiatives and or pride activities within your organization, your community? If yes, we want to hear what you've seen and experienced. And if not, we also want to hear what that is like for you, in the context of knowing that there are organizations, communities, and regions where um, this is happening. So no right or wrong answers here. The only answers that matter are the ones that are true for you. I guess I can sort of speak candidly for myself and say, I'm excited to have this conversation with Taylor, but also really frustrated, and sort of exhausted from having to constantly defend um, like myself, the work that I personally do, as well as our community. But I think that's also part of what makes Pride so spectacular is that it's really our moment to keep our flag planted in the ground and continue to take up space. But let's see how everybody else is feeling. This session is not just about me and my feelings. It's not therapy. Um, so please don't send me an invoice. So how are folks feeling coming into the conversation today? Oh, this warms my heart to see hopeful is the biggest one, meaning that more people have said that than anything else. Um, Excited to connect. Tired with the UK ruling. Yes, absolutely agreed. A bit stressed from job, frustrated, overwhelmed, worried, and exhausted, traumatized, complex, determined, ready, concerned, uplifted. Yeah, again, no right or wrong answers. Like we're all experiencing, I think, these emotions at any given time at the same time. And the one I think I'm gravitating towards the most right now is just complex. Like that's very much how it feels. Um, so thank you all for that. So let's see for the next one in our yes or no. So a handful of people saying yes so far, handful of people saying no. Um, Great. I mean, look, the more no's, the better. Not yet. Let's see, Neil, for folks who have said yes or no, um, what they're actually experiencing. So it feels like it's harder and harder to make people understand that this work is important. Agreed. Budget cuts have made celebrating Pride with staff an impossibility. I get that. We do work with vendors who are stripping back DEI and ADA. Ugh, don't like that. Um, Cost cuts are coming up, general instruction to downplay DEI efforts. Some programs we serve rely on federal funding and have been given explicit orders to remove DEI from conversations, hiring practices, and professional development. Yeah, I think especially in the US, the federal funding has hurt quite a lot of communities, and the cuts from that relating to the administration's policies around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you all for sharing that. Um, Very appreciative of that. We're going to try to cover as much as we can today in the time that we have together. Um, I'm gonna stop speaking for a moment and let Taylor introduce themselves. So, Taylor, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us. When we were shaping this out, for me, there was no other person besides you that I wanted to have this conversation with, given your experience. So, tell people who you are, what you do, what makes you so wonderful, and if you leave out any of the wonderful facts, I will fill them in on your behalf.
Well, thank you for that. My name's Taylor Leanne Chandler. My pronouns are she, her. Um, I am currently on the board of directors of Capital Pride, which is the host city for World Pride DC this year. I'm a co-chair over the Human Rights Conference, and I'm the TGNC Initiatives Chair for Capital Pride. Prior to this administration, I owned my own DEI company doing consulting with companies around the world. And needless to say, that has come to an end. So it's been very disheartening to say the least. But I'm a published author. I speak, I do storytelling, and I love telling my story as a cautionary tale as well as an inspirational tale. And I think that when we come together in groups like this, that it's a great opportunity for everybody to learn from each other and take little tidbits with them that could be life-changing.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. Appreciate it. Um, I want to maybe just start by asking, like, how are you doing? What's coming up with you? Obviously, you're helping organize one of the, world's largest events for queer people. So I guess personally, how are you doing in your professional work? How are you doing?
All those adjectives that people put up there are exactly how I feel. I guess probably the most is most days I feel overwhelmed. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. It's just there's so many moving parts to putting together a World Pride. And then to have people pushing back, saying to boycott Pride, funders being apprehensive, even though they want to be involved, they're slow to pay. Um, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. And people seeing what's going to happen, like what's going to happen next, what ball's going to drop next. So it's been very interesting to say the least. And in the process of all this, I'm writing my fourth book, which is my full, complete memoir. So I've been on an emotional roller coaster as of lately, to say the least. Yeah.
Well, I know I'm one person who's very excited to read the memoir. So hopefully this season will be over for you soon and you can focus solely on that. Um, but I want to come back to something that we had talked about just a few minutes before this started, but previously as well, around how the election in the US, the administration and its policies have really affected World Pride and like your expectations for it, for attendance, for safety. Like there are some real world implications of how voting or lack of voting or who's in office really dictates sort of our level of safety. I think people in the UK are feeling that right now as well, based off of the recent Supreme Court decision there. But tell us a little bit more about that.
Um, where to begin? I feel like what first and foremost has happened is DEI has become like a dirty word. And instead of it being a gift. And because of that, it's changed funding streams for programs, not just with Pride, but programs that affect LGBTQIA2S plus community in general. Um, because of that, it's made companies be really creative how to be involved. Um, you know, as you can imagine, there's been companies that have pulled out. There's been companies that um, have still contributed funding, but no longer want to have a logo or be publicly known that they did any funding. Um, it's really made it challenging, to say the least. Because I think everybody's, like I said, is hurry up and waiting to see what's going to happen. Um, and as far as security goes, that has been our focal point, is creating a secure space. If you've ever been to a Pride in DC in the past, it's very open. This year, the main areas are going to be fenced in. There'll be specific points to enter and exit. Um, there'll be security you see. There'll be security you don't see. There'll be all of the agencies involved that you could imagine being in the nation's capital. Um, And then with the people we have coming, it's been a focal point for them, their security, because we just don't know what could or couldn't happen. Um, and then even within community, even though Pride is a celebration, more so these days, it did start out as a riot. And I think a lot of people feel like there might need to be a little more of that aspect in play because of all of the restraints that are coming down on us and all the things that this administration has put in place. And the same things are being duplicated, it seems, around the world. It's not exclusive anymore to the US or to the UK. We're seeing it happen everywhere. Um, so it's, but like I said, security is first and foremost. And between because we want people to still come and have fun. And I know that law enforcement, in a lot of its aspects, can be very triggering. But at the same time, we have to be realistic about the world we live in at this point. And because of the things that this administration has said, it's very acceptable to have hate speech, to say your opinions, to act out and cause commotion, cause chaos. And, we're going to do our best to keep that to a minimum. Um, but people have the right to say the things they're going to say. But we also have the right to make sure that people are safe at this event.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that you just said. There are a few things I want to circle back on. One being security, just sort of in general, and it's as much about personal safety, especially because this is a world event and people coming into the US who, may have different passports and documents. If you're from a country that doesn't allow you to update those things, to reflect like your gender identity, like that could pose a problem. Um, but I also think it's important for people to hear sort of directly, as you've just said, around like this has been an ongoing topic of discussion since, DC was selected as the next host city. Um, and that, contrary to what people might be hearing out there, like they should still go, right? Yes, it's a risk, but like there's going to be a risk no matter where you go. There's always a risk when you travel to somewhere. But again, I think it's just important that people know that like there are safety measures in place. Obviously, don't travel if like you don't feel comfortable to, but if you do and you're there, like you will have protection and be surrounded by community. And I think that's again, back to what you were saying around the origins of Pride, like it is about being in community. It doesn't always have to be a parade or a protest. Like Pride can exist in any multitude of ways. But the community aspect of it, I think, is undervalued these days. And we've shifted Pride to be very capitalistic in many ways. And I get it. Like it takes money to fund things and to pay people and to get, the cities on board and all of that. But the origins of Pride were not that. And for me, at least, it feels like we've lost our way a little. So I'm curious with all of my rambling, um, like what does Pride mean to you personally?
It goes back to what you just said, community. Um, you know, to backtrack a little bit, I was born intersex. I lived stealth till I was 41. Um, and when I was outed worldwide in the press because of who I was dating at the time, um, I was very lost. And what saved my life and made it so I'm sitting here today was Capital Pride. People I was introduced to, people that came out specifically and said, I need your help. And then it made a shift so that what I was going through wasn't so personal. It became, I have this platform. What can I do with it? And, so for me, it's about the now chosen family that I have. I have this amazing support surrounding me. Um, when I first started with Pride, I was folding t-shirts. Then I was scanning admission into events. Then I became part of the marketing team. Then I was an executive producer. Now I sit on the board. It's been a journey. But to me, Pride is a time and place where you get to be you, where you get to feel safe, where you get to be amongst people that are like-minded, that think like you. Um, it's a celebration. It's a gathering of conversations. It's having fun, but at the same time being reflective and being grateful for all we've gone through to get here. Um, so it, but pride, I think, can be whatever anybody wants it to be. We're doing a march and rally on Sunday towards the end of Pride. It's the last day. And, the people that we have as keynote speakers, there's going to be some real raw conversation coming out. And people are going to really speak truth to power. And I hope that's what Pride is for everybody, is some level of speaking truth to power.
I love that. Thank you. I feel very similarly. I think what I was saying just a few minutes ago, I feel like I have pride in everything that I do. And so for me, pride is like, I don't need the parade to feel that. Like, pride is me having a book club with some of my queer friends, right? It's, me dancing in my bedroom by myself to the new Lady Gaga album. Like, there are all of these different moments for me that are filled with pride because I can just be myself, and do things that have value and meaning to my queer identity. Um, and I think, again, like we've sort of over the last several decades gotten really roped into, okay, well, Pride is really only in June. And are you participating in Pride, meaning a parade? But I don't think that, when we stop and ask this type of question, not everyone is going to say, like, oh, Pride is going to my local, city parade. Like, they're going to give answers like you just did. And I saw Neil put this in the chat. So, great question for the audience. What does Pride mean to you? Like, again, there are no right or wrong answers here. This is all about you and what it means. I think I'm gonna take us a little off of that question for a second because someone did put a question in the chat I want to discuss. But they asked, what's the biggest problem with companies being silent sponsors from your point of view? I see this trend as well. So Taylor, I'll let you answer that first.
Um, because it puts us in the situation where, like, for me personally, it's like we feel like we're bad, we're wrong, like something we're naughty or dirty or less than. Um, but I understand the power of the dollar. We've watched over and over again when Target put out Pride gear and then there was backlash and, it really affected their bottom line. I don't know the right answer. I don't own a company that's dependent on the public, buying my merchandise. So I don't know how I'd feel if this was in reverse. I know from my standpoint, I wish that they would stand up and be accounted. Um, and because I feel like that's what needs to happen to push back against this administration. Um, like the colleges are all coming together now as one. So if you take on Harvard, you're taking on all of us. And I feel like that's kind of how we need to be. Um, and I mean, there's been pushback against sponsors that are like weapons manufacturers or banks that do banking in certain countries. And there's been so many things. And we've tried to align ourselves with sponsors that have the same ideals as us. But this year, when there has been a few that didn't want acknowledgement for their contributions, it hurts. It reminds me of when I was younger and maneuvering the world, and people would say and do things that made me feel less than and like something was wrong with me, that you couldn't acknowledge me. And I hate that that's happening. Um, but I'm, like I said, I don't have a board of directors that I answer to. I don't have stocks, so I don't know the right answer.
Yeah, I also don't know the right answer. Uh, there's a part of me that thinks, well, you know what, at least they're doing something. But then the other part of my brain goes, okay, but is the bar really that low that we're willing to accept that it feels like we're being treated like we're like back in the closet and have to like hide all of these things again? So yeah, I mean, I guess from my work experience and what I do every day and working with, clients that we create space, I think what gives me hope is that we're still seeing a like large demand for services. Not so much in the US at this point, but globally. And so I think, I don't want to blow too many of my key takeaways, but like the work is continuing, even if it's more covertly right now. And so, again, I think I'm reluctant to sort of judge the motivation behind wanting to sort of stay silent, because ultimately it means that the work progresses. And to me, that feels more important. But that's a kind of very personal viewpoint on it. But thank you for submitting that question. You can submit questions and comments in the chat or in the Q&A box at any point. I don't see any more at the moment. So before we go to breakout rooms, because we're already getting to that point, I guess what would be helpful for some folks, we're going to talk about key takeaways from both of us later, but um, as you've been organizing and having discussions with different companies, like what tools, tips, or resources are you using to like help secure funding to get people on board? What are, I guess, yeah, like what are the things that you're doing that other people maybe can take on board?
We've just been reminding people that, you know, nothing's changed. We've been here since the beginning of time. All of the letters under the umbrella. Um, and this is, to me, and what I feel needs to be reinforced is this is more important now than ever because of what's happening. This isn't the time to boycott. This isn't the time to pull back. This is the time to do more because this will be a snowball effect. Um, it will just lead to other things. You know, they're trying to silence, they're trying to take over women's bodies. They're trying to, make it so women, if you've taken on your husband's last name, you can't vote now unless you have a passport. Well, once again, you're targeting marginalized communities. Not everybody has a passport. And, you know, that's why more than ever, it's important if you feel that in your belly to come forward, stand up, be accounted for. Um, and it's not the time to go back. But I know not everybody can do that. Not everybody has that gumption, or they're fearful, and they're rightly fearful. But at the same time, for those of us that feel like you're okay being in a public space and whatnot, it's very important that you do that. And for companies, you know, I try to remind them that, we're $17 trillion in buying power. And so do you really want to piss off that block of buying power? Because we've seen what boycotts have done to companies over the past few months. And, we're a large group of people that spans the world, that spans socioeconomic everything. And buyer beware. Like, we can roar when we need to.
Yeah, again, agreed across all those points. Um, Now is the time for more is more. It's definitely not a scenario of less is more right now. Like we need as much support as we can get. And I think that's true not only just between like queer people and, individual allies and corporate allies, but within the community, like trans and non-binary people need cisgender queer people more than ever. And I can't underscore that enough, especially as it relates to Pride. For so long, different marginalized groups have been under attack from different parts of the world. And right now, the target is trans and non-binary people, and we can't stand for it. Like, and it's really tough for us to have like pride and be celebratory if we're also not doing our part to uplift our own community. So I think it takes both. Like we need more from organizations, but we also need to ask more and expect more of of ourselves and allies within the community.
Absolutely. I can't agree more with that. I just, no matter what you feel comfortable doing as a person, do something. No matter how little it may seem, that's how we stay strong.
I think I've spoken about most of these already, but If you take anything away from these, is that pride is in everything we do. Again, it does not have to be concentrated to just June or specifically to a pride parade. It could be, again, like you host a potluck in the park near your place with some of your queer friends, right? It could be, you're playing board games. Like it could be again, like you name it. If you're doing it and you identify as part of the community, like there's pride in that. Um, and I said this in the breakout room that I joined, but we're very fortunate to have some of our history documented as queer people. And so the like pathway to success is there for us to learn from and adapt. So we're not starting from scratch, even though it might feel like that. Like the problems and issues we face may be different, but there are people who have done this work before us and were very successful and got us to this point. And I think it's important for us to just remember that we've got a roadmap there if and when we decide, we need some additional ideas and support from history. The work is continuing, even if it's more covert. Obviously, Taylor spoke about this as well. But I think it's also important for people to hear from a service provider like We Create Space that like we know the work is continuing. There are tons of organizations still carrying on, doubling down, doing, the right stuff. Um, so don't lose hope. I think it is very easy for corporations with large brand recognition and presence to sort of dominate the news cycle. So when they do something, it feels like everyone is doing it. But in my experience, those companies are over-indexed when it comes to reporting on things like DEI. And last but certainly not least, and this is the most important one for me, is that trans and non-binary people need us more than ever. We wouldn't have Pride if it wasn't for trans women, specifically Black trans women. We need to show up and show out, especially as cisgender queer people. We can't let this go further than what it has already gone, which is too far. So we have to do our part. And if you ever want to talk about how to be a better ally to trans and non-binary people, please, please, please reach out to me directly. It's something I'm very passionate about and happy to offer any guidance for free. Um, so that wraps up mine. So Taylor, I'm going to come to you.
Well, thank you. So for me, I mean, I talk about this stuff all the time, it seems, but it never gets old. Staying focused on core values, reaffirming that Pride is about visibility, equality, and dignity for LGBTQ plus people. Keep communication centered on human rights, respect, and inclusion, not politics or trends. It's so hard to not get caught up in politics right now. But at the end of the day, we need to stay true to us and what is important to us, regardless of who's in power. And like I think it was Raven said, now more than ever, we need to stand up and let our voices be heard. Um, if you're so inclined to. Not everybody wants to be out and proud. Some of us, either through career or family or different things or whatever the reason, can't do that. And that's fine too. So don't think you have to be like waving the progressive pride flag to be counted. You don't. Um, Respond with facts and empathy. When addressing misinformation or negativity, use clear facts and compassionate language. Avoid getting defensive. Instead, highlight positive impacts of LGBTQ plus inclusion in communities, workplaces, and society. I think if we all, as a world, could just understand and practice empathy more, we'd be so much better off. Because putting yourself in someone else's shoes, I think, is key to treating people better. If we just stop judging people and thinking on any level that we're better than somebody else, we're not at all. Empowering allies and keep momentum. Encourage allies to speak up and support Pride visibly. Building a strong network of supportive voices helps normalize acceptance and reduces the influence of backlash. For me, this is important with companies, standing up and being counted as being our allies. This is important when your conservative friends, your moderate friends, your conservative and moderate family still stand up and stand for you. Um, we need to educate our allies so that they have the tools and powers necessary to do that for us. Um, because not everybody knows the right thing to do. I mean, obviously they can practice being kind, but a lot of times they don't have the language or knowledge to say something or step up as an ally in a crazy situation. So I know we get sick of educating people sometimes, but in this instance, I think it's a good thing. Absolutely. Hopefully those all resonate and you get something out of them.
Thanks, Taylor. I know I definitely could work on being less defensive when I'm in conversation with folks outside of the community because my tolerance level for the bullshit is quite low. So I go from 0 to 100 real quick. Uh, so that's a nice, gentle reminder for me. We'd love to know from you all what's one, maybe two things if you're feeling generous, uh, things that you've heard today that you'll take away to support yourself, maybe your colleagues, as you navigate the upcoming Pride season. You're welcome to come off mute and share them. You can put them in the chat. Um, we can also pause the recording again. That way your answers aren't recorded. But feel free to put them in the chat. Um, I see some coming in. So using facts and compassionate language and engaging our allies on this journey. Pride is in everything we do. Pride is about community, and I want to take that to my committee and invite us to be really intentional about how we show up at our community's Pride events. Keep up the work, don't give up. Love all of these. This is all really heartwarming for folks like Taylor and myself to read. Now is the time for more is more. Yes, absolutely. We're doing the opposite of what Coco Chanel says to take one thing off before you leave the house. We are putting one more thing on before we go to Pride. Take up the space you have and do not give easily. Love that. Yes. Jay, um, you and I had a really beautiful conversation earlier today around that. So I'm glad that you're here to share that with everyone else as well. One thing I didn't put in my key takeaways, but I can't advocate enough, sign up to volunteer at a Pride. Like Pride always needs more volunteers. The last several years, I volunteered at the local Pride wherever I have been living, and it really is a magical experience and really gets you involved in a different way. So if you can volunteer, highly recommend it. Especially, the larger events always need more folks, but the smaller events don't sleep on because they also need people. Um, we also would love your feedback. So if you don't mind scanning the QR code, we're going to pop the link in the chat. Tell us what you like. Tell us what we could do to make these types of sessions and events even better. We want to make sure that everything we do is really centered around what our community wants and needs. And so your feedback is really critical to this. Taylor, I'm going to come back to you to provide some last closing thoughts to the audience. I know everyone enjoyed everything you said, but how do you want to wrap this up for yourself today?
I like what you just said. I mean, get involved. Ally to me is a verb, it's an actionable term. And so volunteer, um, get to know someone. Um, but volunteering really helps you understand something that's outside your comfort zone. Whether you're in community or out, you know, I think volunteering is a great place to start. Absolutely. And we all need volunteers for Pride, no matter how big or small. It takes a village. And, at the end of the day, it is the volunteers that make it happen.
So, well, that's your homework, everybody, from Taylor and myself. Go volunteer at a Pride if you are willing and able. Taylor, I can't thank you enough. I often struggle to give you gratitude because I just don't know if you understand how much I respect and value everything that you do, and who you
Well,
are for our community. So I hope that comes across. You were brilliant today, as always. So I'm just so thankful to have you as a part of my village and community. And I hope everyone here enjoyed today's session. Thank you for being here. It's been our pleasure to host you all in this space. If you ever want more information around We Create Space and what we can bring to your organization, please get in touch. One last plug is We Create Space has a CPD accredited LGBTQ plus inclusion course that's available online. This is currently offered for free. So any person or organization can take advantage of it. Again, this is a no cost way for folks to really step up and step into their allyship, as well as for people within the community to deepen their knowledge. So we'll include that link in a follow-up email. But again, thank you all so much. I hope you have a magical rest of your Tuesday, a great Pride season ahead, and we will see you all very, very soon.